Hello, everyone, and welcome to Imagineering the Future. This is going to be episode 2, or the first official episode, since the first one was just an introduction. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about the 2019 projects coming to theme parks. And we're less than a week away from the first projects opening up to the public. So this is going to be very interesting to talk about as we're right on the cusp of everything opening up. And so I'm going to give you my top 10 most interesting projects here. I also have 2 honorable mentions. But before we get to the list of everything, I'm actually going to talk about the evaluation criteria I used. And first off is going to be just the personal bias for me. Unfortunately, I had to put the personal bias into this consideration just because of the fact that if it's an interesting project, it's based on my own personal interests and not really anyone else's. So if it's interesting to me, I'm going to be putting it near the top. If it's not interesting to me, I'm going to be putting it near the bottom. And so the personal bias had to play a factor in this in some way, shape, or form. Moving on to the second one, though, is going to be the innovation and uniqueness of it. And I kind of see these going hand in hand just because if something's unique to the theme park industry or a theme park or anything in general, it hasn't been done before. And in my mind, that makes it innovative at the same time. There's also just the typical innovations that are going on in some of the projects, too, that we'll be looking at. The third one is going to be the size of the project, because obviously a theme park is going to be a lot more intensive than just a regular ride opening. So the size definitely played a factor in some of these decisions I had to make. Also, the last one is going to be where it is going, or in other words, where the impact is felt in the industry. And this actually becomes a really huge consideration when evaluating the top 2 projects that I had on my list. And it's definitely going to be interesting because a lot of people are going to disagree with this decision that I made personally. But because of this specific consideration, I made the decision I made, and the rankings are what they are. But before we get into the actual top 10 rankings, I did mention I have 2 honorable mentions. The first one is going to be the Unknown Universal project that we have. We don't know what's going on with it at all, which is the main reason why it's an honorable mention. It's too unknown to put it in the top 10, but it also has that mystery vibe to it that we don't know what's going on with it that has it very interesting. And so this is what made me influence the honorable mentions list and the creation of it, because all we know right now is that it's rumored to be a Bourne attraction, because this is actually where Terminator used to be before that closed down. But we don't know if it's going to be Bourne. We don't know if there's another IP being used. We don't know if it's going to be just a generic thing like the Universal Monsters show that's right down the road of this attraction. We don't know if it's even going to stay a show. We don't know if there's going to be some kind of dark ride element to it. The show building is a little bit small, so I would assume the show would stay the same, just with a different IP used. But we don't have anything confirmed. We don't have anything known. And so until an announcement's made about this project, it's going to stay in the dark. And it's very interesting to see how it's going to play out. The second honorable mention is just a personal connection I have to it, and that's going to be the Tigers coaster that's going at Busch Gardens, Tampa. And with this coaster, as I mentioned in episode 1 in my introduction, I interned at Premier Rides, so close to the end of my internship was when this project came in, and we got to work on it. And seeing another project that I had a hand in being built in the industry is always something that I look forward to. It's very rewarding to see something come out, and I'm super excited to see how this one comes out. But that's the honorable mentions I have, so we're going to go to the top 10 list, starting from the bottom, working our way to the top in typical fashion. Number 10 is going to be the Bigfoot Rapids ride at Knott's Berry Farm. And this is more just a renovation, but looking at the concept art that they've been putting on online and everything, the theming that's being added to it almost makes it feel like it's going to be a new ride. We don't know if that's going to be specifically what's going on, because there's a lot of differences between concept art and actual finished products some of the time, so we don't know how much difference is going to be. But I'm all for adding new theming to rides, and all for adding the immersion factor into it, and seeing that there's going to be, it looks like there's going to be an animatronic Bigfoot or some kind of Bigfoot prop or something involved with this ride. So it's going to be very interesting to see that added to this ride. But that's all I have for the number 10. Moving on to number 9 is going to be the Title Twister at SeaWorld's San Diego. And I like this one a lot just because it's unique. We had the Skywarp attraction that went into one of the Six Flags parks last year. Now they're laying it on the side and they're adding a twist to it. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this all works. And also on top of that too, I worked with Dustin before, who was one of the main drivers to the Skywarp layout, and I'm assuming he had a big hand in making this layout and working on this project as well. And also, I know Skyline from the SkyNext conference that I went to a few years back. So I like watching these people, the stuff that they've been making in the industry. And so I'm very excited to see their work and seeing how this all turns out for them. But moving on to number 8 is going to be the first of the 2 expansions that are opening next week. So Sesame Street Land at SeaWorld Orlando will take the 8th spot. This is the land that's being added to SeaWorld Orlando. So it's going to be very interesting because this is them going off-brand with their park, because normally they have the sea aspect and incorporated with all their SeaWorld parks. And then they had the Busch Gardens Europe in Williamsburg, and then the Busch Gardens Tampa, or Africa in Tampa. And so as a result, this is kind of going to be their first off-brand park. And I should also mention too that they have Sesame Place up here in Pennsylvania as well. But when you're looking at the stuff that they have that's more based on their own brand, where SeaWorld has a sea, you have the Europe and Africa brands that are in the Busch Gardens parks. And so adding Sesame Street into these is definitely very interesting because it's going to attract the families, obviously, but it's also an off-brand thing that's very interesting to see how it's going to play out. SeaWorld, also anything that SeaWorld does is interesting to me because they still have been trying to fully recover from Blackfish. They've been definitely making big leaps now that they've pretty much recovered from it. They're starting to grow in their attendance now and starting to get back up there, but it's still interesting ever since Blackfish happened and all the steps they had to make to just recover from that incident. It's very interesting to see anything that comes out of their projects list or anything like that. But moving on to number 7, though, is going to be Wildwood Grove in Dollywood. And I would love to put this up higher if I could, but I couldn't justify putting it any higher than where it's at right now. But I'm really interested in this attraction. Actually, there's multiple attractions in this expansion in general. The concept art looks awesome. If you look on the website that they posted it on, it was off their Dollywood website. It's very family friendly, but it also has a great mix of attractions. There's a roller coaster that's being added. There's like a little playground with like trees involved and stuff. And so you have a awesome wide variety where people of all ages are going to love it. It's also very non-IP based. This is one of the 3 attractions in the top 10, and these top 10s that's only going to have a non-IP based attraction expansion, where it's got its own IP, obviously not as a Wildwood Grove at Dollywood, but it's kind of more just like an Enchanted Forest general theme. And so it's not going to be Harry Potter or Star Wars or anything of that sort. And so it's very interesting to see this one because there isn't really too many of these that go on anymore in terms of not having an actual IP based off of any expansion. As I mentioned with 8, there was Sesame Street. And so there's a lot going on in terms of IPs right now. And so it's always very interesting to see non-IPs come into the play in these expansions. Moving on to number 6 is actually West Coast Racers at Six Flags Magic Mountain. And the main reason why it's up this high is the personal connection at Premier Rides, obviously. But then not only that, but in of itself, it's a very unique ride. You have the IP that's unique because West Coast Customs is technically the IP for this. They have the unique layout where it's low to the ground and it's a racing coaster, but it's not like a typical racing coaster. You're supposed to be low to the ground and actually like street racing and that kind of thing. It's got a really awesome system too, because it's like the first quadruple launch coaster. You go around twice too, and so it's very interesting to see how this is going to play out. I am looking forward to this ride opening. It looks very thrilling. It's what everyone's saying the Fast and Furious ride at Universal should have been, for those that are upset by the final product of that project. And so it's definitely really cool to see this project open up whenever it does. But cracking the top 5, we're going to start off with the Lego Movie World at Legoland, Florida. If you follow my Twitter page in the past few weeks or so, I actually made a top 5 on Twitter. And this was originally number 4, but I had to bump it down to number 5 due to a realization I'll talk about later. But for this one specifically, it's Lego Movie World. It's an awesome expansion going at Legoland. And as someone who loves the Lego movie personally, this is something that's really awesome. I'm looking forward to it a lot. The attractions look cool. The restaurant looks awesome. The shop looks awesome. The additions basically fall in line with the movie. You have Emmett. He's building a triple decker couch, and you're basically going to go soaring over the Lego universe. And so it's basically a soaring attraction that's at Epcot, but just Lego themed. You have Unikitty's drop tower, where you're going to go up to Cloud Cuckoo Land and you're going to drop down. You have you're going to defend Bricksburg when you're in ships, and you're going to be floating around in the water, shooting water at the Duplo figures and stuff like that. It's going to be really cool there. You have Taco Tuesday every day as the name of the restaurant, so that's awesome. You have the Awesome Shop, which is awesome in of itself just in the name alone. So just everything going on with this project I just love every aspect of it, and it's very awesome for me. But moving on to number 4 is Hagrid's Magical Creature Motorbike Adventure going in Islands of Adventure. That's a mouthful to say in of itself, but this is supposed to be Universal's most themed coaster, arguably their most themed attraction, and they've been saying in their press releases and media videos that it's actually the most themed coaster ever. And so it's very interesting to see this one play out. For those that go to Universal and don't like the screens, this is going to have no screens. It's all physical animatronics and everything. And so it's going to be really awesome to see that. This coaster in of itself is unique. The train is going to be a motorbike, so you can have 2 different experiences in the sidecar and on the motorcycle. You have it going 50 miles an hour, so it's not even going to be a basic kiddie attraction. It's going to be a full-on thrilling coaster for the family to enjoy. And the reason why I moved it up from 5 to 4, as I mentioned in my tweet on Twitter, this is actually the first new Harry Potter attraction since 2014. So we've actually been waiting 5 years for something major to come in, because in 2014 was Diagon Alley, and outside of the Hogsmeade expansions that have gone on around the world at Universal Parks, this is really the 3rd unique major addition to the Harry Potter IP and theme parks. And so you have Hogsmeade Village, you have Diagon Alley, and now you're getting this added to Hogsmeade Village in Orlando. But this is like the first almost response to the impact Harry Potter has had after Diagon Alley. And with those 2 expansions that Universal put in Orlando, they haven't really had much of an answer for anything yet. And Disney's been opening stuff, and they have been opening stuff for the past few years. And so seeing another Harry Potter edition come to the theme parks in Orlando is going to be very interesting to me. And so that's why I had to put it number 4 instead of number 5. But the top 3 is going to be very, very interesting here. Number 3 is Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway at Hollywood Studios. And the sole reason why this is so high is just because of the fact that Disneyland's been open almost 65 years. Disney World has been open for almost 50 years. And this is going to be the first attraction, or first ride, actually, depending on what you consider an attraction. This is the first ride that Mickey and Minnie have been a part of. And so it's taken so long to finally get to this point where the mouse that started it all is actually finally getting his first attraction, first ride. And it's very interesting to see this play out. And I'm really excited to see what the final product is. Additionally, too, with this, there's not too much known about the attraction at all either. You have like a couple of pictures of what the ride is going to look like when you're in it, like concept art and stuff like that, but there isn't too much that's really out there either, though. So I'm very excited to see what the finished product is going to be, what the story really is, and everything else that's featured in the ride. But moving on to number 2, and this is where the controversy is going to start. Unfortunately, I have to put Star Wars Land here at number 2 at Hollywood Studios and Disneyland. And there's so many things going for Star Wars Land that everyone's going to want to put at number 1. You have the innovation, obviously, with the merchandise. You're going to build your own lightsaber. You're going to have droids that you're going to be building, basically. You have unique merchandise. You have the cantina that you're going to be sitting, eating, and drinking at. You have the 2 awesome new attractions that are going to be coming into the land eventually. The first one, Smuggler's Run, is going to open with the actual expansion opening, and so that's going to be really fun, where you get to pilot the Millennium Falcon. You're going to have all these interactive buttons that you're going to push and stuff. You have the Rise of Resistance that's going to be coming after the fact, and that's going to be something that's really crazy too. And it's very innovative. The size is there. And the issue I have with it personally, though, is where it's going and the impact of the industry. And so, unfortunately, we all know Disney's doing this, but I see it as more of a top-level innovation for the industry than more of a great innovation for the industry, because Disney's doing it, but Disney is so far above and ahead of everyone else in this industry that it's kind of hard to figure out where else something like this could go. I mean, Universal has hints of it with Diagon Alley and now their new coaster that's coming in this year, that they showed a potential to be able to do something like this. But then after that, who else is even close to this kind of innovation that's going in the industry? And in my opinion, I don't really see anyone. Maybe over in Asia, there might be some companies that are trying to bridge the gap more, because they've actually been expanding a lot over there and are supposed to overtake America in terms of attendance in the next few years or so. But there's nothing I can really think of specifically outside of Universal that's really going to have this kind of innovation involved with their theme parks. And so, unfortunately, Star Wars Land had to go number 2 because of that decision. And for me, number 1 has to be Steelers Country at Kennywood Park. And this one checks all the boxes for me personally. It has the personal bias involved because it's my hometown park. It's also the Steelers Country, so I'm a huge Steeler fan. I've been one since I was born, and so I love to see this coming into Kennywood. And then not only that, but it's also very innovative and unique. We've never had a sports team before become an IP, so this is going to be very awesome to see. The size, it's a land, so it's not the biggest expansion. It's a small land too, so it's also not too big in terms of size that way, but it's not just a typical ride. There's going to be other stuff added to it. You got a restaurant there. You have the Steelers Experience building that they're putting in there. And so overall, I think this is going to be a really awesome expansion. But then just the impact of it is, and this is why this takes the number 1 spot over everything else. The impact is going to be amazing if this hits right, and even if it doesn't hit right, there's still going to be there's probably talks going on now of sports teams going into regional parks around the country. There's actually an article that I was looking at that someone quoted saying, if this hits right, I wouldn't be surprised if Jerry Jones actually calls up Six Flags and talks about getting a Cowboys land and that in their theme park by Dallas. And so overall, this is going to be very awesome to see what happens. We have so many sports teams that are in this country alone. We have the 4 big sports of football, baseball, basketball. And so it's just like, there's so many things going on with this project that is not just with Steelers Country, but just the impact it's going to have on the industry. It's going to be very interesting to talk about. I've actually been planning on an episode based off of this innovation, and we're going to talk about what sports teams can go in which parks and what we would see in those attractions. So it's going to be very awesome to see how this is all going to play out. But with that being said, though, this is my top 10 list. If you made it this far, post what your top list is, top 5, top 3, just your top project you're interested in, top 10 as well if you want. As far as I could tell, there was 38 new projects coming into this industry this year, and so I'll put the list in the description. And that's all I have for you today. Best wishes for everyone, and I can't wait to talk to you again.